All right, I'd like to call this Joint Committee of Senate Finance and Assembly Ways and Means to order. Committee Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson. Assemblyman Frierson. Assemblywoman Gorlow. Here. Assemblyman Hafen. Here. Assemblywoman Howdegi. Here. Assemblyman Levitt. Here. Assemblywoman Miller. Here. Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno. Here. Assemblywoman Peters. Here. Assemblyman Roberts. Here. Assemblywoman Titus. Here. Assemblywoman Tolles. Here. Assemblyman Watts. Here. Senator Cannizzaro. Senator Dennis. Here. Senator Dondero Loop. Here. Senator Goycochea. Here. Senator Hammond. Senator Kekeffer. Senator Ratty. Here. Senator Severs-Gansert. Assemblywoman Carlton. Here. Chair Brooks.
Here. Thank you. Will you please mark those that are not here yet present as they arrive? All right. I would like to remind everyone that while we as committee members and some staff are here in the committee room, the Zoom meeting is still being hosted for staff and agency representatives to participate remotely. This is due to the current capacity limits on the number of people that can attend committee meetings in person. Those wishing to attend committee meetings in person can register to attend by visiting the legislature's Nellis website, and members of the public wishing to make public comment can continue to call in via telephone. There will be a public comment period at the end of the agenda today. All right. Today we will be closing the budgets for the Nevada Athletic Commission, SMART 21, the Western Interstate Commission for Higher Education, or WICHE as we call it, and Commission on Ethics and Department of Indigent Defense Services. We will also have a budget hearing on a budget amendment submitted by the Governor's Finance Office related to the federal COVID-19 relief funding at the end of the agenda. All right, we can get started with our Nevada Athletic Commission budget closing. And that's the first on the agenda. We have Mr. Nichols to begin the presentation when you are ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, committee members. For the record, my name is Colby Nichols, Program Analyst with the LCB Fiscal Analysis Division. I'll be going over the Athletic Commission, discussion of which begins on page 3 of your closing packet. The Nevada State Athletic Commission supervises and regulates all contests and exhibitions of unarmed combat. There are 2 major closing issues associated with this account, the first of which is a new administrative assistant position. The governor recommends reserve reductions of approximately $52,000 in fiscal year 22. And $67,000 in fiscal year 23 for a new administrative assistant position. The agency indicates the position is needed to address an increase in the number of events that are regulated by the commission to improve the agency's long-term operations, as the majority of the agency's current staff is either eligible for retirement or will be soon, to address non-event related task backlogs, and to decrease the use of overtime. The new administrative assistant position would provide administrative support to the commission, including events and weigh-ins. The position's duties would include review of documentation for fighters, coaches, and judges, as well as referees. Additional responsibilities could include tallying scores for bouts, review of medical records and clearances, and issuing of identifications. And outside of events, this position would also serve to back up the agency's front desk to allow for absence coverage in its day-to-day operations. During the budget hearing, the agency provided some additional information regarding the need for this new position. The agency testified that while there is an increase in workload associated with an increase in events due to the pandemic, as other states are not hosting combat sports events, this is not the primary factor in this request for a new position. Instead, the primary factor in this request is to address potential succession issues, as almost all current staff are either eligible for retirement or will be eligible for retirement in less than 5 years. In addition, the agency noted that the new position would be able to help the commission regulate multiple events at one time, as well as allow the commission to dedicate more staff resources to health and safety programs by relieving current staff of some of the event-driven workload. During the budget hearing, the committees inquired whether the use of contract staff had been considered, and in response, the agency indicated it had considered the use of contracted staff. However, contract staff would not address those long-term succession issues previously discussed. The Money Committees also inquired if there would be a reduction to overtime costs should the position be approved. And in response, the agency indicated it did not anticipate an immediate reduction to overtime costs, as the new position would not be filled until the pandemic had ended. In addition, the recommended new position would have to work side by side with veteran staff at events as part of its training, and therefore may actually incur some additional overtime costs at first. However, the agency did testify that it anticipates reduced overtime expenditures over the long term once this position is filled and fully trained. Do the committees wish to approve one new administrative assistant position and the associated costs funded with reserve reductions of $51,814 in fiscal year 22 and $66,403 in fiscal year 23, as recommended by the governor?
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. Do any of the committee members have any questions on this decision in the budget? All right, I do not see any. I would like a motion.
Mr. Chair, I would move GovRec on this. Thank you.
Second.
I have a motion from Chair Carlton, a second from Senator Dennis. Do I have any discussion on that motion? All right, seeing none, all in favor, aye. Opposed? All right, then the motion passes unanimously with the members present, and we can move on to the next decision in this budget.
Thank you again. For the record, Colby Nichols, Fiscal Analysis Division. The second major issue associated with this account is a budget amendment for instant replay technology. During the budget hearing, the agency discussed a request for the purchase of instant replay technology. However, those costs were not included in the executive budget. Subsequent to the budget hearing, the governor's finance office submitted budget amendment A21480395 to recommend reserve reductions of $7,921 in fiscal year 22 only for the purchase of instant replay equipment. During the budget hearing, the agency testified that it was the first state athletic commission to attempt to utilize instant replay technology for boxing, and that the agency had previously updated its regulations to allow the referee of a contest to call a timeout to consult with commission officials or to review replay footage at the referee's discretion. The agency indicated it was currently using low-grade technology during the testing phase of this instant replay process. However, during the budget hearing, the agency indicated it was pursuing the acquisition of better instant replay equipment, as the use of instant replay was now part of the standard operations of an event. The funding that's included in this budget amendment would allow the agency to purchase a new video instant replay machine that records and plays back video, as well as an HDMI video switcher to allow the agency to utilize multiple video feeds, and finally, a portable broadcast monitor that the agency indicates would be used to allow the agency to quickly provide officials footage for review upon request. In addition, the budget amendment contains costs associated with the storage case and lock for the security and transport of this equipment. The agency has confirmed that no camera equipment is needed for the instant replay technology, as the agency utilizes video feeds from existing cameras that are provided by promoters or networks. According to the agency, the ability to utilize instant replay technology would allow the commission to be less dependent on those outside resources for instant replay, as well as ensure that all licensees and promoters, including those smaller and amateur organizations, have the opportunity to utilize instant replay technology. Do the committees wish to approve budget amendment A21480395 for the purchase of instant replay equipment funded with reserve reductions of $7,921 in fiscal year 22?
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. Could you do the other closing items as well?
Absolutely. At the bottom of page 6 of the closing packet, you will see a table. There are 6 other closing items in this account, all of which appear reasonable to staff. Fiscal staff would recommend that those other closing items be approved as recommended by the governor, and we would request authority to make technical adjustments as needed.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. Do any of the committee members have any questions on the instant replay decision as well as the other closing items? All right, I do not see any, so I take a motion.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move to approve budget amendment A21480395 for the purchase of the instant replay equipment funded through reserve reductions, all other closing items as gov rec with technical adjustments as necessary.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion from Chair Carlton, a second from Senator Dennis. Any discussions on that motion? Thank you. All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? All right, the motion carries with all the members present, and we can move on to our next budget item, which is the Governor's Office of Finance Smart 21. And Ms.
Chairman,
Crockett, go
members of
ahead
the
when you're
committee.
ready. Thank you.
Thank you. This budget is the Smart 21 budget. It starts on page 9 of the closing packet. This budget contains costs associated with the replacement of the state's existing financial and human resource information system with a modernized cloud-based enterprise resource planning solution. The budget is generally funded with 81% general fund appropriations and 19% general highway fund appropriations, based on the percentage of full-time equivalent positions in state agencies that are supported by the respective funding sources. There are two major closing issues. The first relates to position changes. As part of the agency's overall staffing strategy through 5 decision units, the governor recommends holding 1 position vacant through April 2022, eliminating 25 positions, including 2 permanent and 23 temporary positions, adding 30 permanent positions, and transferring in 7 positions from the Division of Enterprise IT Services for a net increase of 12 positions over the biennium to support ongoing operations of the project. For a bit of background, work on the Smart 21 project was initiated by the 2013 legislature, and during the 2019 through 21 biennium, the Board of Examiners approved a contract for system implementer LSI Consulting to implement SAP system software to replace various existing information systems. The office also contracts with Gartner to provide independent verification and validation services to mitigate the risk of failure and identify any issues that may arise with the project during implementation. The new system is being deployed in a phased approach. On March 1st, 2021, the first phase, which included non-payroll related HR modules, was deployed. The first phase was initially anticipated to be deployed in January 2021. However, there were slight delays experienced due to business disruptions and closures associated with the pandemic. Remaining modules, including payroll, are scheduled to be deployed on January 2022. And finance modules are scheduled to be deployed July 1st, 2022, which is in line with the schedule projected during the 2019 legislative session. With regard to staffing strategy and the decision units in this budget, the governor recommends funding temporary staff to support project implementation efforts through a one-shot appropriation heard in a bill hearing on a later date. To support permanent staff for ongoing operations of the Smart 21 decision system, the governor is recommending decision units in this budget, including E225 and E227, which recommends holding 1 permanent position vacant with reinstatement in April 2022, eliminating 25 positions, including 2 permanent, 23 positions dedicated to project implementation that are considered temporary in nature that were retained in the base budget, for savings totaling $5.5 million over the biennium. The position that would be temporary, held vacant temporarily, is the Office of Project Management Administrator position, and that is being held vacant for operational reasons and would be reinstated 3 months prior to the deployment of the financial modules of the system in July 2022. 2 eliminated permanent positions are vacant, while 22 of the 23 temporary positions are filled. Effective July 1st, 2021, the 23 temporary positions would be continued as temporary positions funded through one-shot appropriations. In Decision Unit E228, the 23 temporary positions would be transferred to permanent positions at various dates throughout the biennium when the role of each position transfers from project implementation to ongoing system support and operations. Additionally, Decision Unit E228 recommends 7 new positions, 2 of which would start as temporary and then transition to permanent. Total funding in Decision Unit E228 is $4.4 million over the biennium. There's a table on page 12 that summarizes the positions within those 3 decision units. In Decision Units E520 and E920, the governor recommends transferring in $1.5 million in revenue from the Division of Enterprise IT Services to transfer in 7 positions. Those positions would assist with the transition of legacy systems to the Smart 21 system. The transferred positions support various human resource and financial information systems, such as the Human Resource Data Warehouse, the Nevada Project Accounting System, Advantage Human Resources, Nevada Employee Action and Timekeeping System, and the Nevada Executive Budget System, some of which would be retired and replaced by Smart 21. One position that supports systems that would be retained is recommended to transfer as well. During the budget hearing, the committees inquired whether any issues have been encountered with the project that could result in additional costs to the states. In response, the agency indicated that additional costs could potentially occur if configurations of the SAP system beyond the initially identified configurations were determined to be necessary to support the state's operational needs. To define the initial system configuration, the agency did conduct extensive workshops with agencies prior to implementing phases of the projects to identify business requirements, with the goal of aligning the state's processes with standard configuration, which is deemed to be best practices. To date, with the March 2021 deployment of certain human resource modules, minimal changes have been noted. However, with the future deployment of the finance module, which would involve significant changes in how fiscal and accounting work in the state is done, there may be a need for additional system configuration, which could potentially increase costs. The committees discussed the Center of Excellence concept, which is the term used to refer to the unit that oversees the operation of the Smart 21 system and supports continuous improvement through system patches, updates, and reconfigurations. Centers of Excellence are a common feature in entities that have deployed an enterprise resource planning solution such as Smart 21, with the goal of improving business efficiency and enhancing system capabilities. In determining the structure and staff level of the Center of Excellence, the agency consulted with various entities that have deployed similar systems and determined that the operational structure of these units was generally consistent and ranged from 36 to 50 positions, which is consistent with the number of permanent positions recommended for this budget. The agency indicated it may augment state staff with contractors as necessary to quickly respond to emerging needs. And additional changes to staffing level may be needed once the project is fully implemented and fully transitions to the operational phase. Regarding the positions recommended to transfer from the Division of Enterprise IT Services, Decision Units E520 and E920, the committee inquired why costs not directly related to Smart 21 are recommended to transfer to this budget. The agency indicated that transferring staff who work on legacy information systems that would be retired provides for continuity of system operations and facilitates staff transitioning to duties involving the new Smart 21 system. Transferred staff would support legacy systems until they are retired and then transition to supporting the Smart 21 system. The intent of transferring the positions is also to retain qualified staff, as anticipated staff would likely seek other employment as the planned retirement date of their assigned system approaches. Many of those systems are scheduled to be retired on September 30th, 2022. There is one position that supports systems that will not be retired that is also recommended to transfer, such as the Nevada Executive Budget System, and the agency indicates transferring this position would provide for improved support and cross-training on these critical information systems. Within the Division of Enterprise IT Services budget, 3 of the 7 positions are currently funded with infrastructure assessments, which are charged by the Division of Enterprise IT Services to state agencies for a full-time equivalent position for non-billable services that provide statewide benefits. and the remaining 4 positions are funded with programmer developer fees charged to state agencies based on work performed on an hourly basis for the support of agency information systems. According to the Department of Administration, it intends to continue to charge using agencies such as the Division of Human Resource Management and the Governor's Finance Office for the support of their information systems and transferring the funding to the Smart 21 budget. As the information of 6 of the 7 positions would be retired September 30th, 2020, the work of these positions would transfer to the support of Smart 21 at that time. To align funding with the duties performed, it would be appropriate to transition funding for 6 of the 7 positions to the General Fund and Highway Fund effective October 2022, which is consistent with funding for all other Smart 21 staff and project costs at an estimated cost of about $509,000 General Fund and about $119,000 Highway Fund in FY 2023. Transfers of revenue from the Division of Enterprise IT Services would decrease by a corresponding amount. The remaining position who works on systems that would not be retired would continue to be funded by transfers from the Division of Enterprise IT Services through programmer developer fees charged to state agencies based on work performed. In future biennia, changes to the funding of the positions may be necessary to align with the duties performed and the ongoing funding model for Smart 21. Which has not yet been determined. The staff discussed the funding change with the agency and the Governor's Finance Office, and both agreed that it appeared to be reasonable. To continue to monitor the implementation of the Smart 21 project throughout the biennium, the committees may wish to consider recommending issuing a letter of intent to receive semi-annual updates on the project, such as an overview of activities conducted by the agency, a list of project deliverables received and anticipated to be received, information regarding the work performed by the 7 positions transferred in from the Division of Enterprise IT Services, information regarding the planned location of Smart 21 following the transition from implementation to ongoing operations, and information regarding development of a plan to allocate Smart 21's system costs to state agencies as a means of recovering non-general fund and non-highway fund funding sources for the support of the system. There are 3 decision points for the committee on the box on the top of page 15. The first is, do the committees wish to approve decision units E225, E227, and E228 for net savings totaling $1 million over the biennium, to hold 1 position vacant through April 2022, to eliminate 25 positions, 2 permanent and 23 temporary, and add 30 permanent positions for a net increase of 5 positions as recommended by the Governor. The second decision is, do the committees wish to approve transferring in 7 positions from the Division of Enterprise IT Services in decision units E520 and E920 and fund 6 of the 7 positions with revenue transferred in from the Division of Enterprise IT Services through September 22, and transition the funding of these positions to the General Fund and Highway Fund effective October 2022. On the 1 remaining position that supports information systems, that would not be retired with revenue transferred in from the Division of Enterprise IT Services throughout the upcoming biennium, with funding comprised of revenue transferred in from Division of Enterprise IT Services of $870,663, General Fund of $508,795, and Highway Fund of $119,347. And do the committees wish to issue a letter of intent instructing the Office of Project Management to report semi-annually to the Interim Finance Committee on its operations and the status of the Smart 21 project?
Thank you, Ms. Crockett. I appreciate that. Do the committee have any questions on these position decisions? I do not see any, so I would take a motion.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move staff indicated at the top of page 15 of our closing documents.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion from Chair Carlton, a second from Senator Dennis. Do I have any discussion on that motion? I do not, so all in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed? And the motion passes with unanimously with those present. And that will move us on to our next Smart 21 item with system costs.
Thank you, Chairman. To support IT-related costs associated with the Smart 21 system, the governor recommends $6.7 million over the biennium in 2 decision units. The first decision unit, E229, recommends $354,351 over the upcoming biennium to support continued data cleansing and integration efforts to develop interfaces with the Smart 21 system for existing information systems. There was funding approved during the 2019 legislative session in one-shot funding for the same purpose. And the funding in this decision unit would chew up the costs with updated projections. In decision unit E236, $3.2 million each year is recommended to support costs associated with services provided through a contract with LSI Consulting or cloud-based software as a service access and monthly licensing costs. Regarding decision unit E229, these are one-time costs that are typically funded through one-shot appropriations for IT projects where the timing of costs may be uncertain. And funding these sorts of costs with a one-shot funding allows funding to be available in both years with flexibility for the agency to transfer funding as needed from one year to another. Accordingly, the committee may wish to consider disapproving decision E229 and adding the $354,351 to a one-shot appropriation bill. The bill has not yet been introduced, but once it is introduced, staff would monitor the bill and recommend an amendment to the bill during the hearing. And the decisions for the committee are on a box on page 16. Do the committees wish to not approve decision unit E229 with the other understanding that approximately $354,000 would need to be added to the Smart 21 one-shot bill to support continued data cleansing and integration efforts in the upcoming biennium? And do the committees wish to approve decision unit E236 for $3.2 million in each year to support software as a service licensing costs?
Thank you, Ms. Crockett. Do you think you could go through the other closing items as well?
Yes, Chairman, there are 4 other closing items which appear reasonable, and staff recommends they be closed as recommended by the governor and requests authority to make other technical adjustments as needed.
Thank you. Does the committee have any questions on this decision or the other closing items? I do. Chair Carlton.
And thank you very much, Ms. Crockett. Have we gotten any indication from the administration when we would be receiving the budget amendment?
It's not an amendment. It would be an amendment to the one-shot bill once it's introduced rather than an amendment to this budget. So staff would monitor the bill and recommend an amendment when the bill is heard by the committee.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that we had it all straightened out. I thought that's what you meant. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chair Carlton. Do we have any other questions from the committee? Oh, Assemblywoman Titus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I'm on. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a concern over, I appreciate the need for this. I support it, but I'm wondering about the oversight and the updates that we get. Having sat in this chair for several sessions now and have witnessed some IT projects that were huge in cost and underproduced, I'm just wondering, do they report back on a quarterly basis, or who's monitoring this, and do we get updates and letters of intent and those kind of things?
Thank you for the question. In closing item number 1, the committees did approve issuing a letter of intent. There are items listed on the bottom of page 14, some bullet pointed items that would address items that would be reported. And those would include activities conducted by the agency, updates on the deployment of the project, including cost and timeline, discussion of deliverables received and issues identified with those deliverables, and that sort of thing. So there is a reporting mechanism in place as approved by the committee. And those would be semi-annual reports, so once every 6 months.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I missed that. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Any other questions from the committee on this decision? All right, I see none, so I would take a motion on this decision, including the other closing items.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move that we not approve Decision Unit E229 with the understanding that $354,351 would need to be added to the Smart 21 one-shot bill to support continued data cleansing and integration efforts in the 21-23 biennium. And then I would also approve Decision Unit E236 for $3.2 million per year to support the software and service licensing costs. I would also recommend that we approve closing items 1 through 4 as recommended by the governor and give staff the technical authority to make technical adjustments as necessary.
Second.
I have a motion from Chair Carlton, a second from Senator Dennis. Do I have any discussion on that motion? All right, I see none. So all in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed? And the motion passes with the majority of the members present. And we can move on to our next budget, which is the Witchy budget. And we have Mr. Casera here to walk us through that. And you can get started when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, this is John Casera with the Fiscal Analysis Division of the Legislative Council Bureau. Starting at page 17 and moving to page 18 of your packet is the Western Interstate Commission on Higher Education Administration budget. There is a single closing issue. Again, beginning at the top of page 18, the governor recommends the transfer of the Witchy program and budgets from the Office of the Governor to the Nevada System of Higher Education, resulting in general fund savings totaling $85,854 over the 21 to 23 biennium. Witchy has limited staff, 1.4 FTE as recommended by the governor, and operating over the interim, mostly with a single staff member, the executive director. This budget previously received cost-allocated services through the Administrative Services Division, Agency IT Services, and the Office of the Attorney General. And these supporting functions remain a crucial component and would be required to be absorbed by NCHE were this decision unit approved. According to the agency, the small size of this program makes it impractical to operate as an administratively self-sufficient agency. In a survey of other states, the agency indicated Nevada was the only Witchy program that does not operate within the higher education system. Fiscal staff note that this decision unit does include $15,000 per fiscal year in general fund appropriations paid to NCHE, which according to the agency is representative of all costs associated with this organizational shift. Moving to the bullets at the middle of page 18 represent benefits, according to the agency, of co-locating Witchy within NCHE. The first is shared resources previously received through administration through various cost-allocated programs. This includes information technology, legal, accounting, and the potential utilization of student workers for administrative support. Second are community partnerships. The shared organizational structure could improve partnerships within and between NCHE and Witchy, involving individual specialties within the university system. And third is program innovation, primarily with NCHE, which could improve with a shared organizational structure. During the March 1st, 2021 hearing, members of the committee requested detail relating to the nature of the move to NCHE. Fiscal staff followed up with the agency, and the agency indicated Witchy would continue to operate under its own statutory authority, which is NRS Chapter 397, and that the commission, were this decision unit approved, would maintain autonomy. And the primary intent, again, according to Witchy, includes the ability to share knowledge and resources through a partnership, which could be made easier through this co-location. Per the agency, Witchy employees would become NCHE employees. However, Board of Regents would exercise no budgetary authority over Witchy, and the authority to appoint the Witchy director would remain with the commission. This organizational move, as recommended by the governor, would require a change in statute, and a bill draft has been requested to facilitate this transfer. The motion at the bottom of page 18 reads, do the committees wish to recommend approval of the governor's recommended relocation of the WICHE administration and the WICHE loans and stipends budgets from the office of the governor to the Nevada System of Higher Education, resulting in general fund savings totaling $85,854 over the 21 to 23 biennium, contingent upon passage of enabling legislation to facilitate the organizational move. Mr. Chair, I'm happy to go through other items here as well, if that's helpful.
Please do, Mr. Casera.
There is a single other closing item at the top of page 19. Fiscal staff recommends the other closing item be closed as recommended by the governor and requests authority for staff to make other technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you. Does the committee have any questions on this item? Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson?
Thank you so much. So it's just a comment. I'm excited about this move back. I know that we've had this position placed in NSHE before and then brought it back over, but it really seems to be that while we've had it outside of the system, we've had a lot of change in executive directors. We've had some issues with consistency with keeping an executive director, and when you're an office of 1.4 people, you can feel very alone unless you're in an environment where there's synergy around you. So I think this move back will be good for staff and hopefully for the longevity of the program as well, to be in a place where they can be in a little bit more energy around them, help and support a better kind of eco-culture, if you will, for them.
Thank you. I agree. That's a great observation. And does anyone else on the committee have any questions or comments on this? Chair Carlton.
Thank you. And Mr. Casera, I don't want to throw you a curveball here, but I think this is about the third change we've made to WICHE since I've been coming through the back door of this building. So I'm trying to remember, and if you don't know right now, it's just, this is purely curiosity, where they were before 2010.
Thank you, Madam Chair. John Kucera with LCB Fiscal for the record. Fiscal staff's understanding is prior to 2010, they operated mostly as a standalone entity. They were operated by NSHE from fiscal 10 to 15, and between then and now have been under the auspices of the governor's office.
Okay, so they were by themselves. And I remember right, then Senator Amodei had an issue, and so it got moved, and then we moved it back out, and now we're moving it back again. I hope we're going to break the budget in moving costs with these four folks. So this will actually be a physical location, if I remember correctly. We will actually be putting them in with NSHE, but they will stay autonomous as far as decision-making process, staff, things along that line. Am I correct?
Madam Chair, yes, it's fiscal staff's understanding that staff would be located in the system office in Rito on the north side of UNR. However, the rest of your statement is also correct. The commission would remain independent, remain autonomous, and would have budgetary authority over its own accounts.
Okay. And they will be at UNR. Okay. Well, once again, things get located at UNR. Thank you very much.
Any other conversations or questions on this decision? I do not see any, so I would take a motion for this decision as well as the other closing items.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would recommend approval of the governor's recommended relocation of the WICHE administration and the WICHE loans and stipends budget from the governor's office to the Nevada System of Higher Education, resulting in general fund savings totaling $85,854 over the 21-23 biennium, contingent upon passage of enabling legislation to facilitate the organizational move, and also recommend other closing items be as recommended by the governor, and giving our excellent staff the authority to make any other technical adjustments as necessary.
Second.
All right, I have a motion from Chair Carlton, a second from Senator Dennis. Do I have any discussion on the motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I hope it actually works this time. Thank you very much.
And I agree. Any other discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none. All in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. And the motion passes unanimously with the members present. And Mr. Casera, we can go on to the next witchy budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John Cusera, LCB Fiscal. Moving on to Witchy Loans and Stipends account on page 21 of your closing packet. There's a bit of an overview here, and fiscal staff will note that the attachment on page 27 is the slot matrix that I'll be referring to through most of this presentation, so it may be helpful to set that aside to see the bigger picture. Again, beginning on page 21, the Nevada Witchy program that should be distinguished from the Regional Witchy Office, which is a nonprofit comprised of 17 witchy members, including 15 states and 2 freely associated states. The Nevada program is also termed witchy, so I'll do my best to differentiate those as needed. There are 2 programs operated by the Nevada Witchy. One is the Psep, is the Professional Student Exchange Program, and the other is the HPEP, is the Health Profession Education Program. Committee members may have been familiar with the prior term, which was the Healthcare Access Program, or HCAP, that experienced a name change over the biennium. Psep is a loan forgiveness program, which includes admission preference and reduced tuition. This is a program managed by the Regional Witchy Office. HPEP was approved by the 1997 legislature, expanded the mission of Witchy, and is operated by the Nevada Witchy Office. Moving on to page 22 of your closing packet includes some details that differentiate these 2 programs. Again, Psep is managed by the Regional Witchy, and students accepted in this program generally receive admission preference and pay reduced tuition at in-state public institutions and approximately 1/3 at private institutions. 25% of the support fee is a loan, which must be repaid with interest. Again, this is a Nevada-specific rule. 75% of the support fee is a stipend, for which repayment is waived if the student returns to or remains in Nevada upon graduation and practices for the same number of years for which financial assistance was received. The Health Profession Education Program, or HPEP, provides a support fee. Prior to the interim, and as approved by the 2019 legislature, this support fee included a 10% repayable loan component. However, fiscal staff note that the commission removed this 10% loan component in fiscal year 21 and will be discussed in the major issue. Again, as approved by the 2019 legislature, with the exception of psychology intern slots, the remaining 90% is considered a stipend, which is waived if the student remains in or returns to Nevada and practices in a medically underserved area. Page 23 of your closing packet includes 2 tables that detail the breakdown of slot types as well as the distribution of students among states. And I'll move on to the major closing issue at the bottom of page 23. This is the continued funding of the Psep and HPEP participant slots. The governor recommends $943,684 in general fund appropriations and a total of $1.3 million over each year of the biennium for support of HPEP and Psep programs. Moving on to page 24 of your closing packet. As mentioned previously, changes to the legislatively approved program were made over the interim, including no longer supporting new veterinary medicine students and removing the HPEP loan component. Program revenue, including loan repayment and interest revenue, is used to support the program, and reductions in general fund may generate increased need for general fund support in future biennium. There are 5 primary issues. The first, under item A at the bottom of page 24, is the discontinuation of veterinary medicine Pset. The governor recommends discontinuing support for new veterinary medicine students, as was approved by the commission in fiscal year 21. However, current students would be supported through the culmination of their program. According to the agency, a decision to exit a field is made when a Nevada public program becomes available or when there is a sufficient number of those professionals in the state. The commission indicated this change was made in fiscal year 21 due to pandemic-related budget issues, and expenditures previously associated with veterinary medicine slots have been reallocated to support physician assistant slots. Referencing the slot matrix, you'll see 20 physician assistant slots recommended by the governor in both fiscal year 22 and 23. Item number B is removal of the 10% HPEP loan component. Again, as approved by the 2019 legislature, 90% of this program was a forgivable stipend, where 10% was a loan component. Fiscal staff notes that this loan component is not in statute. However, loan repayment revenue is budgeted, is legislatively approved, and removal of this program revenue may again create additional dependencies on the general fund. As a rough estimate, using 10% of the figures in this program, this may reduce future revenues by approximately $43,000. Item C is reduction of the Psep loan interest rate. Again, this loan interest rate is not set in statute, and the commission has authority to set a generally competitive rate. This was reduced over the interim from 8% to 1%. Again, similar to the HPEP loan component, this is not in statute. However, program revenues are approved by the legislature. They're used to support the program and may increase dependency on the general fund. An estimate of the general fund impact is approximately $31,000. Item D is continued support for psychology internships. The WICHE loans and stipends budget includes $112,500 each year that is passed through to the Division of Public and Behavioral Health to support 3 psychology interns at $37,500 each. Finally, governor recommended budget reductions include $30,000 in general fund reductions each year of the 21 to 23 biennium, met by reducing between 3 and 4 nursing slots in the HPEP program. Following the hearing on March 1st, 2021, members of the committee expressed concerns relating to the removal of veterinary medicine support. In information provided by the agency during the hearing and in follow-up, it indicated it's unable to restrict support based on a specialty or geographic region. As a result, and for example, WICHE is unable to restrict Psep support only to students seeking to specialize in food and animal veterinary medicine and cannot require return to a rural area of Nevada. The agency indicated a lack of desire to leave the veterinary medicine field. However, given the limited resources, the commission felt that a reallocation to physician assistant slots was a more appropriate use of funding. Additionally, members of the committee expressed concern relating to the changing loan component, and as stated earlier, the agency indicated a 25% loan component with the Psep program is set in statute and could only be removed with legislative action. This and other administrative changes are proposed in AB 247, which was amended and referred to Assembly Ways and Means. Additionally, and per the agency, the Nevada WICHE Commission eliminated the 10% loan component, which is not outlined in statute. The bottom of page 25 and moving to the top of page 26 of your closing packet, fiscal staff will note a few changes from the slot matrix that committee members may have been familiar with in past biennia. First is occupational therapy, which is the top of the slot matrix, which again is on page 27 as an attachment of your closing packet. The new slot matrix breaks out year 1 and year 2 of occupational therapy slots, which allows for an additional, the second year of the program, is more expensive than the first, and a breakout in the slot matrix distinguishes those 2 rates. Secondly, within nursing, which is the HPEP program at the bottom of the slot matrix, in biennia past, the nursing programs were separated into different slots. However, according to the agency, and based on similar program requirements, as well as an effort to consolidate funding to $7,700 per year per student, these slots have been consolidated into a single line item. And as you'll see at the bottom of the slot matrix, there are 20 nursing slots recommended in each year of the 21 to 23 biennium. Finally, and also within the HPEP program, committee members may be used to seeing new and continuing students here. According to the agency, due to the part-time nature of many students in nursing programs, for example, new and continuing students are no longer tracked. However, you'll see the total number of slots again on page 27 in the attachment. Per the agency, tracking new and continuing students is impractical, and this information is not available. The 2019 money committees reissued a letter of intent issued to WICHE each biennium since 2009, permitting WICHE to administratively adjust the allocation of slots between fields to meet student demands. The money committees previously directed WICHE to inform LCB fiscal staff in writing of any changes to the mix of slots within 30 days. The money committees also previously instructed in a letter of intent WICHE to report if slots had been reduced due to insufficient repayment revenues. Additionally, the 2019 money committees approved back language in the Authorizations Act, which is SB 553 in Section 19, to allow WICHE to balance forward unexpended fee revenues received after May 15th of each year to benefit HPEP slots. In fiscal year 20, approximately $41,000 was balanced forward. The motion at the bottom of page 26 asks, do the committees wish to approve total funding of $1.3 million in each fiscal year of the 21 to 23 biennium for support of the Professional Student Exchange Program and Health Profession Education Program participant slots for the WICHE loans and stipend budgets as recommended by the governor, with authority for fiscal staff to make technical adjustments as necessary. Additionally, do the committees wish to reissue a letter of intent allowing WICHE to reallocate student slots between fields to meet student demand, to instruct WICHE to report to the Interim Finance Committee within 30 days any such reallocations, to report to the Interim Finance Committee on any slot reductions due to insufficient repayment revenues, and to permit WICHE to balance forward unexpended fee revenues received after May 15 of each year to support the HPEP.
Thank you, Mr. Cassara. Does the committee have any questions on these decisions for us this morning? Chair Carlton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll go ahead and jump in since I think most of the committee members are still trying to absorb everything right now. So it's always been a little bit confusing because there are these two programs here. So it's trying to keep the line between the two can be difficult. So I'm more interested in the Psep loan interest rate program. The change in the interest rate gives me a little bit of concern. It's supposed to be competitive, so I'm assuming they took a look at everything and came up with that number. The one good part about this that I see is the support for the psychology internships. I have noticed over the years that when we get into the matrix that we have, that we don't usually see a lot of the mental health. We are seeing it in the what we used to call HCAP, but now it's HPEP. So that's really good that we're looking at some of those programs, and especially the slots for the psychiatric nursing. That's excellent. But I still have some concerns on the exchange program. I guess they're looking at numbers for physician assistants, which I tried to find some numbers. And in looking at the occupational boards and trying to add up the different physician assistants, to me, it seems like there's a lot of physician assistants already in the state, but, and they don't actually specialize, they stay general practice is my understanding. So I have some concerns going forward for those of you working on this in the future, that we hear about not being able to get psychiatrists on a regular basis in a lot of our health and human service budgets. So not being able to address that in the student exchange program gives me a little bit of pause, but knowing that we have all these psychiatric nurses on the other side of the equation, and we all know that a lot of times it's, just getting that nurse in there makes a huge difference to be able to support those patients. So that's basically my only comment moving forward. I'm having a hard time recognizing the physician assistant component of this, but I know that they've done their work and looked at what the needs actually are out there, but a physician assistant is a 2-year program, and it doesn't quite get us where I think we need to be in true primary care. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair Carlton. Ms. Ouellette, did you want to address that or possibly answer any of those clarifying questions or concerns?
Sure. Thank you, Senator Brooks. Jennifer Ouellette, Director of Nevada WICHE, for the record. For the Pset program specifically, there are only 10 fields, and those are set by Regional Witchy in Colorado to participate in, and there is no mental health field among those 10 fields to participate in. So physician assistants were chosen actually because there's an extreme shortage in Southern Nevada. There's actually we're doing okay with physician assistants in Northern Nevada, but there is an extreme shortage in Clark County. So we're trying to work on that over the upcoming biennium. And we would love to invest more in psychiatric nurses through our HPEP program. And last I heard, UNLV is coming online with their own psychiatric nurse track. And hopefully we will be able to continue to fund more students in that profession. I hope that answers your concerns, Assemblywoman Carlton.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. I think it's good that we know that the exchange program doesn't have mental health in it. And I think that's a structural problem that will need to be addressed in the future. I'm surprised by the physician assistant because it seems like every time I want to go to the doctor, that's where they want to shove me to. So I guess it's maybe just a matter of cost. I don't know, but we'll go from there. So you're saying that our ratio for physician assistants is out of line with the national ratio of physician assistants for population? Or was this just a request from the industry saying that they don't have enough?
No, this is based on workforce data that we obtained from the governor's office. And this basically physician assistants and APRNs who can serve in conjunction with primary care are critical shortage areas for Nevada.
And thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I was very aware of APRNs. I was not of physician assistants. So thank you for setting the record straight, Ms. Olet.
Thank you, Ms. Olet. Do we have any other questions? Oh, Assemblywoman Titus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I appreciate what Witchy does. I was under an impression that Witchy originally was started to solve areas of need for states that join if we didn't have those professional programs in our state, so that we could fund our students, Nevada students, going to states that did, and then in turn, states that didn't have a program that we had could send their students to us. That was the original concept of this program. Am I correct with that? Okay.
You are absolutely correct.
I see a head nod. All right, thank you for going on record for that. But as we have developed our programs, witnessing that there are not, no matter how you cut us up, whether it's a family practice doc, a APRN, or a PA, there's not enough primary care providers in the state of Nevada, not just in rural areas, but in needy urban areas too. So we definitely need to focus on those. That's been identified, but we have, over the years, we've developed med schools both north and south. We now have PA programs both north and south. We have nursing programs north and south. And we actually have programs in rural areas now, internships, et cetera, and schools. So I'm curious about the expanding of the numbers of PAs when, again, there's some like the psychiatric, if we don't have that. So, and I understand that the 10 programs that Witchy has on board is what we have to work with. So I see where you have to work within that program, but what do we do? Because I agree with Assemblywoman Carlton, and let that go on the record, that I absolutely agree that we don't have
It
enough.
happens once or twice a session,
Yes,
folks,
and
so
it's
mark
usually-
it down.
Yeah, and I agree that we don't have enough mental health providers, nor can we educate them here. So what do we do? How do we expand that Witchy list? Do we have any influence on that?
Jennifer Olet, for the record, we do have some influence, and I can work with them on that over the upcoming biennium. I think maybe working also with our local universities on expanding the psychiatric APRN is also another avenue. That's definitely something that we can look at more closely over the upcoming biennium for you. And for as far as PAs, we do have we have 24 students who are attending UNR every year. We don't support them, but that's a fairly small class size. So we are still participating in that PA field to help students who are not able to get into UNR.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the clarification. Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Do we have any other questions from the committee? All right, and thank you, Ms. Olet. And so I think we are ready to take a motion on these decisions.
So if you would, Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve total funding of $1.3 million in each fiscal year of the 21-23 biennium for support of the Professional Student Exchange Program and Health Professional Education Program participant slots for the WICHE loans and stipends budget as recommended by the governor with authority for fiscal staff to make any technical adjustments, and also issue a letter of intent allowing WICHE to reallocate student funds between fields to meet student demand, to instruct WICHE to report to the Interim Finance Committee within 30 days any such reallocations, and to report to the Interim Finance Committee on any slot reductions due to insufficient repayment revenues, and permit WICHE to balance forward unexpected fee revenues received after May 15th of each year to support HPEP. Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion from Chair Carlton, a second from Senator Dennis. Do I have any discussion on the motion? I do not see any discussion on the motion. All in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. And the motion carries, passes unanimously. And we can move on now to the Ethics Commission, or the Commission on Ethics budget, and we have Ms. Hoppy to walk us through that. Go ahead when you're ready. Thank you, Mr. Casera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, this is Karen Hoppy, LCB Fiscal Analysis Division. On page 29 of your closing packet is the Commission on Ethics, Budget 101-1343. Staff is responsible for developing closing recommendations for this budget. The committee has not previously reviewed this budget. The Commission on Ethics is responsible for investigating and adjudicating public complaints involving the ethical conduct of public officers and employees, providing ethical guidance through published opinions, and providing outreach and education to public officers and employees regarding ethics requirements and prohibitions under Nevada law. There are no major closing issues in this budget. One other closing item on page 30 of your packet. Fiscal staff recommends that this budget be closed as recommended by the governor and requests authority for staff to make technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you, Ms. Hoppy. Do the committee have any questions on this budget? I see none, so I take a motion.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move GovRec with technical adjustments.
Second.
I have a motion from Chair Carlton, a second from Senator Dennis. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously, and we can move on to the next budget. Ms. Hoppy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have two budgets on our agenda today for the Department of Indigent Defense Services. On page 31 of your packet is the first budget for the department. There is one major closing issue. As originally submitted, the executive budget does not include recommendations specific to the Davis v. Nevada consent judgment. This consent judgment is an agreement whereby the plaintiffs and state of Nevada agreed to settle the litigation in which plaintiffs challenged the state's fulfillment of its duty to adequately fund indigent defense in the rural counties. As background, AB 81 of the 2019 session created a new Department of Indigent Defense Services to oversee issues relating to the provision of legal representation to indigent persons in the state. The department is governed by the Board on Indigent Defense Services. The 2019 legislature approved the governor's budget recommendation to establish the department with 7 new positions. Additionally, AB 81 moved the existing state public defender with 14 positions from the Department of Health and Human Services to the new Department of Indigent Defense Services. On November 2, 2017, the American Civil Liberties Union of Nevada filed a class action lawsuit, Davis v. Nevada, with Nevada's first judicial district court against the state of Nevada for allegedly failing to ensure rigorous legal representation to people accused of crimes who cannot afford attorneys. On February 24, 2020, the Davis v. Nevada plaintiffs and defendants stipulated and agreed that the lawsuit would remain stayed until April 30 of 2020 to allow the parties to review the Interim Finance Committee's funding decision regarding a request from the department for a contingency account allocation of $525,036 to fund a workload study, a data analyst consultant, a training program, and a timekeeping system. At its April 30, 2020 meeting, the IFC approved the allocation, which was to be used over the 2019-2021 biennium. According to the agency, on August 11, 2020, a stipulated consent judgment was filed for Davis v. Nevada. During the March 1, 2021 budget hearing, the committees asked for an update on the Davis v. Nevada consent judgment and whether the state has fulfilled its obligations. The department testified that the recommended budget does not include funding to supplement the maximum amount that a county is required to pay for the provision of indigent defense services as authorized by NRS 180-320 subsection 3 and defined by board regulations, which were effective March 5th of 2021. The regulations establish a maximum contribution formula, which provides that the maximum amount a county is required to pay for the provision of indigent defense services during a fiscal year must not exceed the sum of the average actual county costs for fiscal year 2018 and fiscal year 2019, plus an inflation factor. Any actual county costs for the provision of indigent defense services in excess of the maximum county contribution would be the state's responsibility, and counties may seek reimbursement of these excess costs through quarterly submission of a county's financial status report up to the amount approved by the board. The department also testified that it had estimated the state's liability for provision of indigent defense services for both fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23 as $4.8 million per year in total for all 17 counties, $1.8 million per year in total for the counties with a population less than 100,000, and $1.2 million per year in total for the 10 rural counties defined in the Davis v. Nevada consent judgment. These estimates are calculated by subtracting the maximum county contribution per the board formula from the estimated fiscal year 2021 county budgets for indigent defense services. Fiscal staff worked with the governor's finance office and the agency after the budget hearing to determine the resources that would be necessary for the department to comply with the consent judgment, which stipulates that the court may dismiss the Davis v. Nevada action anytime after June 30 of 2023 if the court determines that all terms of the judgment have been substantially complied with. The consent judgment includes a schedule for interim deadlines, stipulates the elimination of economic disincentives, establishment of minimum standards, and uniform data collection and reporting, and provides for independent monitoring of the consent judgment. The department has indicated that the minimum amount required in the 2021-23 biennium to comply with the consent judgment is estimated at $1.2 million per year. Pursuant to board regulations, prior to requesting state contributions, each county must submit a plan for the provision of indigent defense services. The initial due dates for the plans are September 3, 2021. According to the agency, once the plans are in place and approved by the board, each county will submit quarterly financial reports. Although the agency has provided estimates of the amounts required for the state to fulfill its fiscal responsibility pursuant to the consent agreement, costs for fiscal year 2022 and fiscal year 2023 are not known at this time. Based on the processes set out in Chapter 180 of NRS and board regulations, costs will likely not be known until the fourth quarter of each calendar year in the 2021-23 biennium. Consequently, the money committees may wish to set aside restricted general funds in the IFC contingency account of $1.2 million for each year of the 21-23 biennium, based on proposed county maximum contribution amounts for fiscal year 2021. Upon submittal of financial reports demonstrating costs in excess of a county's maximum contribution formula and up to the amount approved by the board for provision of indigent defense services, the department may approach the Interim Finance Committee upon recommendation of the governor for contingency account funding to reimburse the counties. In conversations with fiscal staff, the governor's finance office has indicated support of this IFC contingency account allocation. On February 26, 2021, the governor's finance office transmitted budget amendment A214501008 to the fiscal analysis division. The budget amendment recommends general fund appropriations of $75,000 in each year of the 21-23 biennium to fund the expense of a court monitor for the Davis v. Nevada consent judgment, to assess the extent to which the state of Nevada is complying with the terms of the consent judgment. On April 19, 2021, the governor's finance office transmitted budget amendment A216591008 to the fiscal analysis division. The budget amendment recommends general fund appropriations of $25,000 in each year of the 21-23 biennium to fund training and resources as required in the consent judgment. So the decision before the committees in this budget: do the committees wish to approve budget amendment A214501008, which provides general fund appropriations of $75,000 in each year of the 21-23 biennium to support court monitor expenditures required by the Davis v. Nevada consent judgment? Also approve budget amendment A216591008, which provides general fund appropriations of $25,000 in each year of the 21-23 biennium to support training and resources expenditures required by the consent judgment. And finally, approve general fund appropriations of $1.2 million in each year of the 21-23 biennium to fund estimated support to 10 rural counties stipulated in the consent judgment, and place this funding in the Interim Finance Committee contingency account, whereupon the department could request the amount of funding needed based upon actual indigent defense services expenditures reported by the rural counties.
Thank you, Ms. Hobby. Could you go over the other closing items as well?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is one other closing item in this budget for travel and training, which appears reasonable to staff. Fiscal staff recommends all other closing items be closed as recommended by the governor and requests authority for staff to make technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you. Do anyone on the committee have any questions on this decision or the other closing item? Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson?
Thanks so much. And this is really complex, and I just want to say appreciate all the work that I know that staff put in for the consideration to make sure that we were getting to the point where we could meet all the requirements of the consent decree. And I know a lot of this has been really tricky with a lot of different moving parts. So I just wanted to acknowledge all the work that went into this and the appreciation I have for getting us to this point on the part of all players.
Thank you. And do we have any questions or comments on this budget from anyone on the committee? I do not see any, so I would take a motion, including the closing items.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. And rather than read through it all again, I would move to close this budget as staff indicated in the 2 closing boxes on page 34 of our closing document.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion from Chair Carlton, a second from Senator Dennis. Any discussion on the motion? I see none. So all in favor of the motion, aye. Any opposed, nay? And the motion passes unanimously. And that brings us to our next budget, the budget of Public Defender. And Ms. Hoppy, go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, for the record, Karen Hoppy, Fiscal Analysis Division. The second budget for the Department of Indigent Defense Services is found on page 35 of your closing packet. This is the Public Defender, account 101, 1499. Staff is responsible for developing closing recommendations for this budget, which has not previously been heard by the committees. The Office of the State Public Defender represents adult and juvenile indigent criminal defendants when a court appoints the office as counsel. The office currently provides services for 2 counties, Carson and Story. The 15 remaining counties provide their own public defender services through a county public defender or private contract attorneys. In this budget, there are no major closing issues nor other closing items, and fiscal staff recommends this budget be closed as recommended by the governor and requests authority for staff to make technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, I take a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would move GovRec with technical adjustments.
Second.
I have a motion from Chair Carlton, a second from Senator Dennis. Any discussion on the motion? No discussion on the motion. All in favor, aye. Aye. Against, nay. And the motion passes unanimously. And that is it for our budgets today. And I just want to thank Ms. Hoppy and thank Mr. Casera, Ms. Crockett, and Mr. Nichols for their, as usual, their professional and efficient manner that they walked us through these today. And then that will lead us to the final agenda item before public comment. And that is a finance office budget amendment and related to the COVID-19 federal funding budget. And I think we have Director Brown here to present that to us, and you can go ahead and present that when you are ready.
Good morning. My name is Susan Brown. I serve as the Director of the Governor's Office of Finance. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present this budget amendment for Budget Account 1327, COVID-19 relief programs. This account was established in fiscal year 2020 for the purpose of managing CARES Act funds, including coronavirus relief funds and Governor's Emergency Education Relief Funds. Through this amendment, this account becomes an executive budget that is subject to the State Budget Act and legislative review. Going forward, this account will include funds appropriated through the CARES Act, the Consolidated Appropriations Act, and the American Rescue Plan. This budget account will be used for one-time appropriations for federally funded programs that are intended to provide funds to state and local governments to respond to the COVID-19 public health emergency. This amendment includes one decision unit to establish authority in the upcoming biennium. It includes emergency rental assistance programs. These funds are provided through the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021 to provide financial assistance and housing stability services to eligible households. This includes rental assistance, utilities, and home energy costs and other expenses, which may include relocation expenses such as security deposits, application fees, certain late fees, and internet service. These funds are available through December 31st, 2022, and the amount that's requested here is about $90.3 million. The second component of this decision unit is coronavirus relief funds. These funds were provided through the CARES Act. This includes approximately $290,000 to fund administrative costs through the end of the calendar year to continue providing oversight, distribution of funds, completion of required reporting, and complying with audit requirements. The GFO is continuing to work through reimbursement of these funds with state agencies, and a summary document of these allocations has been provided in your packets. While this budget amendment does not include the American Rescue Plan state and local relief funds, it is the intent to place those funds in this budget account when they become available. The state is expected to receive approximately $2.9 billion and will have until December 31st, 2024 to spend these funds. And with that, I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Director Brown. I think we do have a few questions from the committee, and I think we'll start off with Chair Carlton.
And thank you, Ms. Brown, and that was very short and to the point, but I think we're a lot more curious than that today. So we know what the conversations have been about being able to receive these dollars and expend these dollars. It's been a moving target for all of us, and we've had to work very closely together to try to figure out how to manage all these dollars in the best way possible. So it's my understanding that the reason why these are being put in the Authorizations Act is because only the Appropriations Act contains general funds. These are federal funds, so therefore they will end up in the Authorizations Act. Am I correct?
Brown, for the record, yes, that is correct.
Thank you. And even though it's in the Authorizations Act, we will still, the legislature, the people's branch of the government will still have the same authority and oversight that we would have if it had been through an Appropriations Act. So by putting it in the authorizations, it will go through the same work programs, the same review, the same oversight, and the same accountability that we would for any other work program that we would establish and provide for. Am I correct?
Susan Brown, for the record, that is correct.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. I just think it's very good for us to get it on the record because there is a lot of confusion about how federal dollars actually get into our system, and there's been concerns that it's not going into appropriations, so people don't think we can actually spend it. They don't understand the fine line that we have to put depending upon what the dollars actually are. We still do have to silo dollars in certain ways. So I guess my next question would really be about so as we've moved through, and there's multiple tranches of money. I love that word tranche. I'm going to use it as much as I can. So there's multiple tranches of money. So we're looking at the third tranche coming. We don't have the guidance yet, so I don't really want to get into that one too much. But the second tranche that we've had that was extended from December 31st of 2020 to December 31st of 2021, which I will tell you, being from the nonprofit world, let us all sleep at night again. What are we looking at as far as any additional eligible expenditures that the state might be able to use to help us with some of the cuts that we've had to make in the past? And how are those being evaluated, and where do we stand with that right now?
Susan Brown, for the record. So where we're at right now, and I can provide a little bit of background before I answer that question. So with the coronavirus relief funds, which I believe is what you're referring to here, it was a priority to ensure that the state's limited funding was utilized in a manner consistent with the federal requirements. And as we know, those were continuously changing. The purpose was to bolster the state and local government's response to the public health emergency to protect the lives and health of all Nevadans. Again, the guidance changed numerous times, and with these changes, the way the funds were utilized was reprioritized. When the CARES Act was passed, the coronavirus relief funds had to be spent by December 30th. However, in December, with the passage of the Coronavirus Preparedness and Response Supplemental Appropriations Act, the use of these funds was extended through December 31st of 2021. So that gave us another year to spend these funds. And we are continuing to review the use of the funds and other funds that have been appropriated through the other coronavirus relief packages. As the state prepares to reopen offices, a survey has been provided to state agencies to identify needs that will assist in safely reopening state offices to the public and to ensure there is no diminishment of services during this transition period. State agencies have been requested to provide those responses to the governor's finance office no later than tomorrow. So those requests will be reviewed and prioritized within any remaining funds that are identified as reimbursements are finalized for the funds that have previously been allocated. So we are going through, and I believe you have a spreadsheet that shows how the funds have been allocated.
And thank
And
you.
you can see they were.
And thank you, Ms. Brown. Yes, we do. We have it on page 5 of our documents. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that you haven't really, at this moment in time, you have not identified any other additional expenditures, that you're reaching out to the state agencies to find out where the divots might be in their budget, to figure out where these dollars might be able to be used as we move forward through closing this fiscal year?
Susan Brown, for the record, that is correct. There have been some additional needs that have been identified beyond what you see on this spreadsheet. And as I said, we are working through reimbursement requests and reconciling all of these funds to see what we might have available to state agencies or for other programs so that we can get these funds allocated.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. And if I may, I'll close with this. So is there a list right now that might be able to be shared, or is it still in the process of being developed?
We have a short list. I'm sorry, Susan Brown, for the record. We have a short list of needs that were identified in January, and we will have additional information hopefully by Friday of this week if we get those responses back from state agencies by tomorrow afternoon as requested.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I look forward to the administration sharing that list with us so that we can take a good look at what possible changes might need to be made by the time we get to the end of this fiscal year, because these dollars with the December 31st deadline, I think it's going to be very important for us to know what's going to be in this fiscal year and what's going to be in next fiscal year. Because we know what we're looking down the barrel of a shotgun in next fiscal year. There's not a lot there. So trying to figure out exactly where these dollars will fall so that we can alleviate any consequences that might happen as related to that. So I look forward to getting that list and us being able to evaluate it and figure out where those dollars actually need to fall in which budgets and which in with whatever fiscal year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the latitude. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair Carlton. And that is an incredibly valuable point that on when the money hits and what it's available for. And yeah, we had 16 interim finance meetings just on CRF funds, 21 in total. And the last one we had near the end of December, where we had to make some decisions based upon these deadlines that have now changed, and then the federal guidance changed right after that IFC meeting on the last week of the year in which those funds were supposed to be disposed of or used, and then which triggered it rolling into this one. And so it's just been a moving target, but we definitely have needs moving forward in the budget that we're currently closing, and identifying when those funds have to be used or can be used is going to be incredibly important. So thank you for your flexibility over this interim, and our fiscal staff, all those IFC meetings, and then all the IFC members who are here today. It was a wild ride, and I imagine it's going to be even as busy moving forward. Oh yeah, please, Chair Carlton.
And thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Typically, we don't do this, but Ms. Brown, it occurred that as I'm looking at how we're looking at the rescue dollars in the future, I asked all my questions based on the CARES Act dollars, but as we're looking at what I'm calling the rescue dollars, is it the administration's intention to work with the legislature in the same way that we're doing the CARES Act by putting them into the Authorizations Act? That's what I understand this. I just want it to be confirmed. And that we'll actually be processing them through work programs depending upon how the guidance comes out? Is that
Susan
correct?
Brown, for the record, that is my understanding, yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure we had so focused on the CARES, I really didn't dig into the rescue side, because we know there was some confusion on the CARES when we think we've got it straightened out. And I would hope we would use the same process all the way through, just to make it easier for everyone to be able to track the accountability on how these dollars work through the next couple of years, or actually the next 3 to 4 years, because there's a long timeline on these dollars. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
No, thank you. Any other questions? Senator Hammond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question, Ms. Brown. I was looking at the ERAP monies that you have there. First of all, and I guess I just don't think I have a really good understanding, grasp on this. Are those monies actually part of the CARES Act money? Because I thought it said it was actually part of the federal ERAP funds, and it might be separate from that. And if so, if they're separate, well, actually, if that would be the first question I have for you. Is that part of the CARES Act money? Because I don't see it in that list on page 5 of the totals that are coming in.
Susan Brown, for the record, that is correct. These are from a different bill at the federal level. This is the Coronavirus Preparedness and Response Supplemental Appropriations Act, is where the Emergency Rental Assistance Program funds were allocated or appropriated. So that is the bill that was approved by the Feds in December that also extended the coronavirus relief fund deadline.
Thank you for that, Ms. Brown. And then second of all, I noticed that you have not expended money from this yet. Is that correct? There's no expenditure yet from here? Because then the question would be, how much money do you have left? Or is there how many applicants do you have so far for the program if you haven't expended? Because at some point you have to try and figure out how much money you're actually going to be spending this year. And then in the request you have the change in your request. You basically are wanting to carry over money into the 2022 year. So I guess a lot of us are probably wondering, what's the criteria? Have you expended any? What's the criteria? Well, and I got one more question after that, if you could.
Okay, Susan Brown, for the record. So as far as the Emergency Rental Assistance Program funds, the $90 million, that determination was made in conversations with the Housing Division, who is managing these funds. And so the funds are actually broken down. The Clark County Social Services Program will receive $93.8 million over the life of this program. And the agreement with Clark County Social Services has been completed, and we expect that they will be requesting approximately $30 million before the end of this fiscal year. The Reno Housing Authority, they are projected to receive about $10 million. That agreement, I believe, has been finalized, and they are expecting to request $3 million prior to the end of this fiscal year. And then the Nevada Rural Housing Authority, that agreement has been completed, and they have received their first $1.5 million in funding. That went out last week. Their total projected dollars over the life of this program is $14.8 million. And then there is another $6.2 million that is being set aside at this moment that is expected to balance forward. I don't know the number of applicants, and I don't have that level of detail on this program, but we could certainly reach out to the Housing Division to reach out to those entities to see where we are with the program.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. And Mr. Chair, if I could, one more. I certainly would love to know what the criteria is going forward for receiving funds, because I know it's a 12-month program plus an additional 3 months if necessary. And I know that cost of living is going up even as we speak. And so I didn't know if there was going to be an agreement between the renter and rentee in this program where they couldn't raise rent. I'm very curious about that and many other things. But I really am mostly curious on the last page when we talk about the expenditures. We did approve in the last special session, I think it was SB1, the Nevada Courts Eviction Mediation Program, of which it sits $2,220,000 north of that. I just wanted to know if we've expended any from that program at all to this point. Do you have an accounting of how much is being expended and how much we have left?
If you can give me a minute, I can look that up.
Or I could wait until later to get the information, so we're not all sitting around waiting. I mean,
We can provide it. Yeah, we can provide that to you.
yeah, that'd be great. And I guess the last thing, because I just came to my mind, there's a lot of money in this list. For example, $85 million for contact tracing. Do you have the flexibility? Because you said something earlier that made me think that you had the flexibility to evaluate where you're at with these programs, and then see can there be changes to the allocations that you've already made? I mean, I know that you've approved and finalized, but I didn't know if there's going to be an evaluation, then maybe a readjustment. Is that a possibility?
Susan Brown, for the record. Yes, there is a possibility that those funds could be reallocated if the program does not need those funds.
Oh, thank you. That's really good to know, because I noticed that we only had $445,000 in mental health mitigation and youth suicide prevention. I was hoping that maybe we might be able to readjust to see if we can't put more there. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And I have some questions from Senator Kiefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Brown, as a follow-up to Senator Hammond, I know that we've got another I think 208 million total coming to the state for rental assistance, another 124.25 coming to the state generally, with the other funds flowing to the local governments. Are we going to use the same mechanism to distribute those funds for rental assistance?
Susan Brown, for the record, I'm going to hand this one off to Leslie Mullenkamp, as she's been working with the Housing Division on this.
Thank you, Leslie Mullenkamp, for the record. Each one of these programs, they have different structures. So depending on which housing assistance program or rental assistance program, it will all follow different mechanisms. So we just basically at this point are bringing in the process of bringing the funds in, and then we will the agency will administer it according to those rules and guidance.
Okay, and I can go back and try to track it, but I know if we put out 30 million from the CARES Act and another 125 that we got in December, and there's another 125 coming in, and that's all to the state. I know the locals received a bunch of money related to housing assistance as well. If we could get perhaps a categorical breakdown of how much was put into rental assistance through those three different stimulus bills, and how much of it has been used, that would be helpful. And Mr. Chairman, I think, to follow up a little bit on Ms. Carlton's comments, I think certainly putting these into an executive budget account, I think, will be incredibly helpful going forward to the legislative, to the IFC and sort of legislative authority as we oversee the expenditure of these funds. But if they come to us exclusively through work programs, we're not really still making decisions about how the money gets authorized, right? We're sort of putting the final stamp of approval on it, but I think it would make sense for us to consider some sort of structure that ensures that we have some engagement in the prioritization and decision-making process for how these funds get ultimately allocated. And maybe that's a conversation for another day, but if we just rely on the work session or the work program process, we're just deciding up or down whether to approve what the executive branch recommends, rather than us making some of those recommendations ourselves. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Kiefer. I tend to agree with you, and this is going to be, like I said earlier, it's going to be a very interesting next year and a half, and I look forward to spending a lot of time with everybody here. And do we do we have any other questions from the committee on that issue? And well, Senator Dennis, and then I'll go to Chair Carlton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to follow up. I think Senator Hammond started to address this, but I didn't hear the specific answer to the factors that determine the balance forward on the ERAP. What were the factors that determined that?
Susan Brown, for the record. There were $124 million was received for this program, and of that $124 million, as I mentioned, there's $30 million that's expected to go to Clark County, $1.5 million to the Nevada Rural Housing Authority, and $3 million to the Reno Housing Authority. So we just subtracted the monies that we expected to be going out in the current fiscal year and placed the rest of that in this budget amendment for use in the next fiscal year.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair Carlton?
And thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So in looking at the decisions that were going to be addressed in the future with this particular budget amendment, it really just references the Corona Relief Funds, the CRF funds. It does not address the rescue funds, but I believe it was the intent, as stated earlier, that the rescue funds would go in here also when they're received, but if the budget amendment is silent on that, there is no actual enforcement on that. So I just want to make sure that we have the record really clear that that's where the rescue dollars are going to go. And I want to thank Senator Kickheffer. He was thinking the same thing that I had been thinking, and that's really what my line of questioning was all about, is this is more of the legislature will have more of a back-end process than a front-end process. And I think that's something that we are going to want to address in some fashion. This is a whole new world. I'm not sure how we go about doing that, but I believe the 63 people in this building should have an opportunity to have a conversation about what's important in our districts and what's important to our constituents and where the rubber really needs to hit the road with these dollars, because they're called rescue dollars, and there's a lot of rescuing that needs to go on right now. So I'm confident that we will get another budget amendment or have something that guarantees us some type of process that these rescue dollars will end up in the right spot and have some sort of expenditure model. I'm not sure how we do it. We are limited in a regular session. We have to be very careful of the work that we do during the interim to not overstep our bounds. But I think we're all on the same page. We all want to get this money out on the street to help as many people as possible as quickly as we can. So just wanted to make sure that we had that on the record moving forward, because I'm pretty sure we're in agreement. I wouldn't want to exclude our colleagues that don't sit on these two committees, because I'm sure they're seeing things in their district also that need to be addressed. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this part of the this presentation? I know we have a little bit more. Oh, we have Senator Siebers-Ganser, but I was going to say we have a little bit more. I think we're going to go into a little bit deeper dive on we can go on the American Rescue Plan, because this, like Chair Carlton said, this budget amendment only is associated with the CRF funds. Senator Ganser.
Thank you, Chair Brooks. So it sounded like, and I didn't understand this before, that the rental assistance program, the ERAP funds, didn't come through, weren't allocated till the end of last year, and then we accepted them in February. But earlier, we had done the COVID statewide residential rental program, I think through the Treasurer's Office, and I thought we did like 2 tranches of money. On the list here is $130 million. My question is, because now we have $124.9 million and we'd allocated $30 million, is there a way to trade those dollars out to be able to free up $30 million that we had allocated before? Because now we have something from the federal government that's specifically for rental assistance. Recognizing that we have lots of demand for rental assistance, it's just that we were using our first bucket, roughly $836 million to be able to do it on our own, but now we have a separate program that has a multiple of that amount. So the question is, can we free up the 30 million? I thought it was 30 plus maybe another 50, I can't remember, of the dollars. Can we trade them out, since now we have money specifically from the feds for rental assistance?
Susan Brown, for the record. We would have to do some research on that, because I believe that the requirements of the $30 million that you're referring to that went out may be different than those that are in the ERAP program. So we would have to do some research to determine if that was a possibility to do that.
Thank you. I just was looking at that as an opportunity, maybe if we want, when we're prioritizing, since we now have federal dollars straight for that purpose. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And do we have any other questions from the committee members on this budget amendment or in the federal funding in general? I do not see any, and it's I think it's just very important that this can be very confusing. There were several rounds or tranches of funding that came in with guidance on how they could be spent. Some went directly to the local communities. Some went to school districts. Some went to higher ed. Some went to the state of Nevada. That then turned around and went back to those entities that got direct funding as well. And all of it came with rules and policies and procedures associated with it that came from Treasury when we got the money. And now we are looking at, we've all heard about the ARP money that will be coming, but yet none of that has come to the state yet, the state budget yet, while we are hearing announcements of how some of that is going to get spent directly through cities, counties, agencies, and school districts. And so this is all very confusing, but I think it's just good for everyone to understand that as we sit here closing these budgets, looking at cuts, we still do not have either money for the general fund or guidance on how we could use that money in the event we get it. So I think it's just very important everyone knows that, because it is so confusing. But I think that is that. I have no further questions. Does any of the committee have any further questions on this before we? Assemblywoman Titus, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm sorry if I'm not seeing it, but I thought we had, there was an allocation for, and I see all the rental program assistance and all the monies that we put there, but I know we had a conversation on landlord assistance. Is there not any of that in what I'm looking at on this page? I'm sorry? Okay. All right, so I'm just, again, I'm hearing words like it's in the future, so I'm just wanting to make sure that I'm seeing a lot of money here spent, and I thought we had already allocated some money for landlords, but I guess that's somewhere down the road. Am I correct in that? That is not listed here, so we haven't allocated any money at this time to landlords. Okay, thank you.
So if I may, Mr. Chairman, and through you to Dr. Titus, the rental assistance that the constituents get, the check is made out to the landlord.
Okay, so there is.
I can tell you I've signed a lot, had to order new checks, signed a lot of checks, and those checks were all made out to the actual landlord. So I think we want to make sure that when we have the conversation, and I've had this conversation with folks, that if I'm going to Monday morning quarterback this thing, having landlords have access the same way as residents would have, I believe, could have possibly made things a little bit smoother because of the sophistication of the landlords being able to provide the documents.
Right.
There were some hurdles that we had to get over, but I believe once everyone figured out how to navigate the system, believe me, the money went out the door really fast.
So, and thank you for the clarification, because I think that's important to know when we list these things, that amount went directly to landlords and not to the individuals, because we hear mixed information, false information all the time, that people are getting these rental checks, that they're not going to the landlords. And I think that just needs to be clear for, and on the record that checks were written directly to the landlords, not into individual renters.
And I cannot speak for everyone that worked through the process, but I can tell you that the guidance that in my private life, in the world that I work in when I'm not working for free for the state, that the guidance we were given was to make the checks out to the landlords. So that's in Clark County. I can only speak for Clark County. I cannot speak for the 16 other counties, but I believe that's the best practice that evolved through this. And there were a lot of zeros in those checks. So we wrote a lot of them for large amounts to make sure that people stayed stable for 6 to 9 months in their rent. So I just want to make that perfectly clear.
Excellent.
Thank you.
And I thank you for the clarification, and thank you for the question, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. And that kind of speaks to some of the issues we have right now. So the initial monies came out, and they came out quickly, and then guidance followed and changed, I believe, 10 times in the 9 months after that. And sometimes you had to completely upend or change a program, and this ARP money that is approved by Congress for the states, 6 weeks later after it was approved and the vote was taken by Congress, we're still waiting on that guidance. And I think that the Treasury probably learned from all the feedback and mistakes and made and successes achieved in the last year on how to achieve that by creating more specific guidance on the front end. And I'm assuming that's why 6 weeks later we're still waiting on the guidance, but hopefully it lays some groundwork that we can do some good work sooner than later. And so I just appreciate everyone's questions, the committee's questions, and fiscal staff and GFO and everybody who's really just been patient through this, because it's going to demand a lot more patience moving forward. So I do not have any further questions, and I don't think that we have any action necessary from the committee, and no other questions from the committee. We can close this hearing on this budget amendment. And I believe that brings us to our last agenda item, which is public comment. And I wanted to see if Broadcast Services has anyone on the line, please, for public comment. And if not, we'll give them just a minute.
Thank you, Chair Brooks. The public line is open and working, and there are no callers at this time. BPS will be glad to stand by for just a moment. Thank you so much, Chair Brooks. The public line is open and working, and there are no callers at this time.
Thank you, Broadcast Services. And I have a comment from Chair Carlton.
So just an announcement, sort of we're hitting that set time of session. It's the end of April. May the 1st is right around the corner. It is our intention to have a meeting on Saturday morning, May the 1st, to receive budget closing reports. This evening there will be a Ways and Means at Dusk meeting at 6 o'clock. We had thought about having one on Wednesday, but with the Senate's permission, we are moving the briefing or the subcommittee closing from Friday morning to Thursday evening to allow folks who would have another obligation on Friday morning to attend that obligation. So I want to thank the Senate for working with us on that and in changing that briefing around to Thursday evening so that we can get other work done on Monday. So to my Ways and Means folks, things are going to start rolling very quickly, very fast. But please keep in mind that May the 1st is a joint full meeting here in 4100 to receive those budget closings. So just wanted to make sure everybody had the plan for the week. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.